Hey, greetings all. For about the last 45 years or so, I've been running gas-powered tools as far as chainsaws, weed whackers, hedge trimmers, and that sort of stuff. And of course, that was what all America had pretty much. We didn't have too many decent electric tools. I recall originally electric tools when they came on the market had a cord. Oh boy, that was funny. I remember somebody handed me their corded hedge trimmer, which of course I promptly went ahead and cut through the cord while I was working. Those were a mess as far as I'm concerned. And the first battery tools just didn't have what it took, And so I was like this most of my life when people say, well, why don't you use electric tools? Well, they didn't have the torque, they didn't have the lifespan, they just didn't have what it took to be able to do the kind of work I was doing, because when I was on the farm, well, we were cutting large trees. A lot of times we'd be taking down stuff that could be up to 36 inches in diameter or more. And of course, I was heating an entire house with firewood in northern Wisconsin, where the temperature commonly drops to 30 below zero in the winter. And so it took a lot of cutting, a lot of wood, and you needed to have a great big, heavy-duty, snorting type chainsaw that would cover all that for you. And back in the Midwest, I used to use the Jonsereds, the original Swedish-made Jonsereds. We had a 621 that was just an awesome saw. Oh, powerful, smooth. So anyway, after relocating into California, I couldn't find Jonsered there, and I think they've started making their saws in Asia somewhere anyway. They're not the same. And so I switched to Stihl. We had Stihl dealers. Stihls, are Austrian tools that are also made in the United States. A lot of the gas ones are made in the USA. And they're good tools. I never had a problem with Stihl. The only thing I didn't like about their gas tools compared to Jonsered was the RPM was higher, they vibrated more, and so they made more noise. They screamed louder and they shook more. Other than that, they're great tools. Definitely. I stake on Stihl. Right here, we got a MS-250 that if it was this was a car, it's got 350,000 miles on it. This baby has been through a lot. Okay. I ran an entire company with it in California for years, and then I brought it here to the island, and we've been using it to saw down the bigger trees. This is a 16-inch bar on that one. It's a pretty good size saw, and it has significant power. The downsides? Well, the downsides are they stink to begin with. When I get done using one of those and I come back in the house, I gotta take all my clothes off because Ellen will just go, man, you smell like a chainsaw. The fumes from the things just permeate your clothing and so on. So that's not really all that nice. They're loud. Oh, they're so loud. Chances are the high frequency hearing loss that the doctors tell me I have is probably from three things. Using chainsaws, playing rock and roll, and firearms, okay? None of which did I ever actually have proper hearing protection most of the time, so. We don't know whether it was the chainsaw or the Fender Stratocaster that did this to my ears. Probably both. Anyway, they're loud. They smell, and the one thing I can't stand about them is this right here. This thing. That's the recoil starter. I don't know how many of you have ever gotten yourselves deeply involved with recoil starters. I certainly have. Having used chainsaws and other gas tools for so many years, I think I may have pulled the handle off or the rope out on one of these starters 50, 60 times in my life. I don't know. I've become a real expert at rethreading, re-roping, and rewinding recoil starters, and man, there's nothing worse than you get the saw flooded maybe, and so you got to sit there and pull until you clear it out. And before you clear it, the darn rope breaks because it's frayed. I'll tell you, that just drive you out of your mind. Anyway, so on the positive side, again, these are very powerful. They do a lot of work. Yeah, and so they're good. I ain't complaining about them. But recently, I decided that was it. I am no longer using a chainsaw as a commercial application for other people. I am no longer logging for firewood to heat in northern Wisconsin. Most of what I do around here is to trim coffee trees and other things like that that are not really that big. I keep the fruit trees pretty well pruned, and so we don't have a lot of logging to do. And so I have replaced a lot of my gas tools with the lithium battery jobs. Okay, we have a few different types around here. I have some, there's a Milwaukee, Ellen's got her Milwaukee hatchet saw. We're just going to have to talk about because it's real cute. I have Stihl's hedge trimmer, which I've talked about before, both the gas and the electrics, you know. And this is one of their newer lithium chainsaws here. It's not the smallest one, or is it the biggest? This is the MSA 140C. It's intermediate. It's a fairly short bar. This is a 12-inch bar chainsaw with only quarter-inch cutters. But for the kind of work I've got around here, this thing is beautiful. For starters, I don't have to go like this, okay? It doesn't stink either, all right? All I got to do is push my finger on two buttons here and go. Yeah, it makes some noise, but nothing like that gas one, I'm telling you. Nothing like the gas one. It's got the same kind of chain brake, you know, as a regular gas saw does, and so on. Things are very similar. It's not quite as powerful as the MS250 Stihl that I have here, but on the other hand, it's a smaller saw and it was designed for less work, and so, you know, that's kind of making apples and oranges out of things. This was more similar to a smaller Stihl I had that I did sell to my neighbors the other day. Power-wise, they were very comparable. Although that one had a 14-inch bar, so it had cut stuff a little bit larger. The only thing I've noticed about these saws, the lithium ones, that kind of takes a little bit of getting used to, that's that with the gas saws, I usually could manage to, if I put a tank of gas in and I put in a tank of chain oil, I'd usually run through 2 or 3 tanks of gas before I had to refill the oiler for the chain. Well, that's not true with any of the lithium saw tools that I've seen so far. The electric ones, boy, they go through chain oil. I guess they want to keep the thing well lubricated, well spinning, otherwise drag the battery down. I don't know what the point is, but I'm going through probably 2 tanks of oil to every battery charge on this saw. We're finding the same is true with the Milwaukee hatchet saw too. About 2 tanks of oil to a recharge. I have a neighbor down the road who bought himself an electric DeWalt saw, and he's experiencing the same thing. It just throws oil all over the place. So it appears to be just the nature of the beast. So we got away from oil in one way, but we're using a little bit more on the other way. Well, the lucky part of it is at least that oil is not being burned, and so you're not creating CO2 with it. At least it's not a carbon footprint issue. Yeah, I suppose you probably, if you live here in Hawaii with all the local pigs, I suppose you could render down a few of them and fill the tank with lard. It'd probably work too. You just get that kind of bacon smell and start calling all the dogs in the neighborhood when you overheat it. So, anyway, let's just take a little wander over here. I can show you some of the work I've been doing with this thing. So right over here around me, you'll see a big area where we have cleared a lot of coffee trees out of. Ellen is looking for a place to put a storage shed, and so I have taken the coffee down over here. It amounted to pretty much about 30 or 40 coffee trees came out of the area. Did it with this saw. Ellen helped me with her Ryobi hedge trimmer, taking off some of the limbs. There's one big pile of slash that we made from trimming stuff off the coffee. Right over here under the orchid table, you see a great big pile of coffee trunks. This was done with this saw. I've cut down pretty close to 40 or 50 of these with this, so this saw is not sharp and new. All right. Slick, huh? Well, there you have it, folks. The Stihl MSA 140C lithium chainsaw. This is pretty cool too, because they got a little button right there. You press that little button and you see lights come on. It's got one indicating, so it's telling me it's time to recharge this. My saw is just about empty, and I got a lot of cutting done with it before it started to wear down, so these will go quite a ways. I'm impressed. Now, Stihl does make a bigger one. It's quite a bit more expensive, and it runs, I believe, a 16-inch bar, so it'd be comparable with my 250 over there. And it's right around $600, so they're not giving it away. But these electrics, actually, by the way, are still made in Austria. That's kind of interesting, because the gas ones, a lot of it's made in the U.S., but these are still made over there in Europe. Excellent tools, well made. I highly recommend them. Hey, and for me, when I'm using lithium, instead of having to use an oil well, I'm using the solar collectors up there in my roof to run all these tools. Man, you just don't know how that feels. Yep. Alrighty, folks. Hey, hang loose and aloha.